to the Middle East now, where Israel has blocked the entry of all humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip as it demands that Hamas agree to an American plan for an extension of the first phase of the ceasefire. That first phase expired on Saturday. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office said that Hamas was refusing to accept the temporary extension which has been proposed by Donald Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff. But a Hamas spokesman said that blocking supplies to Gaza was cheap blackmail and a coup on the ceasefire agreement, and urged mediators to intervene. Arab governments who helped to mediate the ceasefire have fiercely condemned Israel's decision to withhold aid supplies from the Gaza Strip.
Israel adopts the outline of President Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, for a temporary ceasefire for the period of Ramadan and Passover. We are fully coordinating with President Trump and his people. According to Witkoff's proposal, on the first day of his outline, half of the hostages will be released in one go. At the end, last day, of the outline, if an agreement is reached, the remaining hostages will also be released in one go. Witkoff proposed an outline for extending the ceasefire after he came under the impression that at this stage there was no possibility of bridging the two positions, of Israel and Hamas, regarding Phase 2, and that more time was needed for talks to reach a possible agreement. He even defined his proposal as a corridor for negotiations on Phase 2. Israel is ready for this. Hamas is currently taking control of all supplies and goods sent to the Gaza Strip. It is abusing the Gazan population who are trying to receive the aid, it is shooting at them, and is turning humanitarian aid into a terrorist budget directed against us. We will not agree to this under any circumstances.
And that's the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by the international political analyst and former Nigerian diplomat who served in many countries in Africa, Europe, and the Americas, Ambassador Joe Keshi. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you, Charles, for having me.
What is your reaction to this decision by Israel blocking aid entering Gaza?
I think it's unfortunate, very unfortunate. I think it's callous to start with. And I think Netanyahu is playing his usual game. I was actually reading something before I came in here where an analyst was saying that Netanyahu draws a plan, shares it with the Americans, and then turn around and say that this is an American plan. But you know, Charles, I think on a wider perspective, I think that we'll continue to see this kind of behavior from Netanyahu simply because he is not ready for peace. His goal of destroying Hamas has more or less failed. You could see one of the reasons why they gave for stopping the first part of the agreement at some point was because they said Hamas was putting up a show, you know. And why was that affecting him or Israel? Because this is Netanyahu that has always said that they have destroyed Hamas. And now you see Hamas putting up a show. You see Hamas soldiers or militants in their uniform all over the place. And suddenly you begin to wonder, Israelis are wondering, are not these people that we have destroyed, we have eliminated? And so you can see Netanyahu is playing his usual game. Netanyahu is playing politics. He's playing his usual game of not wanting to, you know, end the war, because it's as long as the war is on, there'll be no election. And his case in court will not take, you know.
I mean, but what sort of impact do you think this decision to block aid entering Gaza will have? I mean, will people starve to death from a lack of food and die from a lack of medical supplies? Is it that dire?
You know, Charles, when Donald Trump said hell will let loose at some point during just before his inauguration, a number of analysts were of the opinion that, look, the place is already hell. So it can...
Well, it could get more hellish.
Yes, it could get, yes. That's exactly what is going to happen. But you know, I personally think that this will continue to happen until the Arab leaders actually come to their senses and decide or be decisive on what they want to do to help the people of Palestine. And I think one of those things they should do to stop both the Americans and the Israelis in their game plan is number one, to take a decision and come out with a plan. Just like the Europeans are trying to do in Ukraine. You know what's interesting about this development, both in Ukraine, is that everybody talks about peace agreement. Charles, as we speak, on both sides, there's no peace proposal from anybody. No peace proposal on the table. The British are trying to lead Europeans to craft one peace proposal which they will present to the Americans. And I think that the Arabs should do this. In addition, they should call a donor conference to rebuild Gaza.
But I thought that was the whole point of their conference. I mean, you know what's happened is that this sudden decision by Israel, this move that they've made, is kind of discombobulated everybody, because there is a peace agreement.
There's a peace agreement.
Sequence. You finish phase one, you negotiate phase two, and then you implement phase two, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, the Arab countries were holding their summit, and they were coming up with a plan about the future of Gaza.
Precisely. They should come up with that plan today and make it clear that this is the plan that they will stand on. But they should go further. They should call a donor conference to raise money for the rebuilding of Gaza. If not, Netanyahu will continue to play this game. He said he's already a master of this game. He does not want to end the war because he thinks that he believes in himself that he must destroy Hamas. But we know that you cannot destroy organizations like Hamas or Hezbollah for so many reasons. And by the way, some of those that are being released are going to join Hamas. They have nothing else to do in that region, in that zone.
And that includes the children who've been orphaned, who are growing up.
They have nothing else to do.
Hating Israel.
Now, look, what exactly did they destroy in that place? Which makes the stoppage of humanitarian assistance even more callous. You've destroyed their homes. They are living in tents. You've destroyed their means of livelihood. And now people are sending aids to them, and you are saying, no, these things can't get in.
Well, an Israeli centrist politician who was interviewed, I think yesterday, said that there were, in fact, several months of food and medical supplies in Gaza. So it's not like Israel is trying to starve them to death. That they've had an accumulation, because over the last, several weeks, they've had like a huge influx of aid. And that there are several months of food and medical supplies in Gaza, so people aren't facing any immediate prospect of shortages.
Look, when you look at some television footage of the number of trucks waiting to go in, you will understand the necessity. If there's so much food in Gaza, all those trucks will not be piling up there to go into Gaza. Look, again, I go back. If there's a problem, let the Israelis withdraw. Let the Arabs put in a peacekeeping force to help distribute the food and ensure that the people of Gaza survive.
Well, Israel certainly aren't going to put any peacekeeping force anywhere near Gaza.
Precisely.
But what do you make of the Israeli Prime Minister's allegation that Hamas militants in Gaza are stealing aid supplies, which is preventing people from getting them in the first place? If that is true, isn't the onus on Hamas to stop doing that?
Look, Charles, I will say this. I cannot verify the story, but the truth of the matter is that we heard this allegation only today or yesterday from the Prime Minister of Israel. If this has been happening, I'm sure that CNN and other global, would have actually put this out there.
Well, to be fair, news organizations are not allowed in there. So they can't
really, this is part of the problem.
They can't authenticate the story.
This is part of the problem. Allow people in there, allow news organizations, so that you alone cannot be the only person telling us what's going in there, because whatever you say, some of us will regard it as not true or propaganda, trying to find every excuse for not ending this brutal war.
But I mean, Ambassador Keshi, you're a seasoned diplomat. I mean, you've been in diplomatic circles for a long time. And what Israel and the US are asking for this time is saying, let us extend the ceasefire till after Ramadan and the Passover.
For what reason, if I may ask?
Well, they're saying extend it, and that, I mean, basically, I think part of it is that the Israelis don't want to pull out, because that's what the next implication would be.
Exactly.
But to some extent, you don't really blame them. I mean, if they don't feel that they've secured the place enough to give them a sense of security, then they're obviously going to be concerned. And what I'm wondering is why Hamas can't just agree to this extension of the first phase of the ceasefire. I mean, it seems to many people to be perfectly reasonable to say, let's extend this for 6 weeks till we get through Ramadan and Passover.
During that 6 weeks, what will happen?
Well, there won't be any fighting and there won't be any killing.
There won't be any fighting. Will there be release of hostages? Because that's all, you know.
Yeah, they
because this is exactly what they were saying, that they need to get, I mean, all those hostages need to be released at a go. Look, the point is, an agreement
was... Hamas won't do that.
Yes, an agreement was made in the first instance that the initial peace agreement is going to last for X number of weeks. And after that, they go back to negotiating for a permanent settlement. This is what Israel is not ready for.
So, I mean, let's just get that bit about stealing food, for example, out of the way. I'm trying to understand the logic, because if the Israeli position is that Hamas is stealing the food supplies, then Hamas actually would have plenty of food.
Absolutely.
For itself. And surely it is the civilians that are going to suffer, because if you're withholding food and Hamas has been stealing the food and has a lot of food, who's going to be deprived?
Look, Charles, the Israelis control the territory. They have their soldiers on the ground. Hamas militants are probably hiding somewhere and coming out sometimes, quote unquote, to steal food. If the Israelis are serious about the people of Gaza, that what they are doing is in the interest of the people of Gaza, they know what to do to ensure that the food supply gets to the population and not to Hamas. So
do you agree then that the substantive point of this Israeli position is to try to find a way to prove that Hamas is breaking the ceasefire?
No, I think...
because, I mean, it's long been suspected that Israel, and that's part of the point you were making, that Israel doesn't want to get to the next stage, which would see all of its forces pull out of the Gaza.
This is just the real thing, that Israel is not real, or should we say Netanyahu, because there have been demonstrations in Israel saying that, look, they should continue with the talks. But Netanyahu himself is not prepared. And unfortunately, the presence of Donald Trump in Washington has emboldened him, that he believes now he can do whatever he wants to do. He would always get the support of Washington under Donald Trump. The pressure being put on him by the Joe Biden administration is gone. So this is why we are in this situation. But I will urge the Arab leaders and the negotiators to please continue to try and find a way of bringing both sides to the negotiating table.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Ambassador Keshi, we appreciate your coming in and giving us the benefit of your analysis. And Ambassador Joe Keshi is an international political analyst and former Nigerian diplomat who served in many countries in Africa, Europe, and the Americas. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Lovely to see you again.
Yeah, too. Welcome back.